So, welcome back, Anaum. I'm Rob Abston, and this is Anaum
Virani.
Virani.
Yeah.
Anaum Virani. And Anaum is one of our interns here at Florida Media Labs, and she'll be starting off the show here on FML Live. We also have Jorge Alvarez to my right. He's not in the video right now, but he'll be joining us in the first seat here shortly. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some important things that happened this week. And so, Adam, as part of your homework assignment, you did some research and you came up with.
I'm going to be talking about the resignation of Nikki Haley from the UN as the U.S. ambassador.
And what do you think about that?
I personally, I think Nikki Haley's legacy in the UN and on a global scale as well, in terms of the UN General Mass, was something I think pretty unimpressive. And I think she realized that too, and I think that's what led her to resign. I think one of the biggest markers of her legacy was the fact that she was behind the move for the U.S. to pull out of the UN Human Rights Council, on her diction that we were unfair to Israel, and her lack of her inability to basically expand on why we pulled out of something such as a Human Rights Council kind of put a dampening legacy of the U.S.'s role in the UN.
So, did she have what is her legacy? I mean, besides the Israeli, I think I've seen some surprising moves from Nikki Haley. I've seen her speak out about the Russian events in interfering with the election when her boss refuses to address that. Um, so, do you think that the legacy is shattered? That this is going to be an overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely consider her victories as well. I mean, she was one of the key figures in getting Russia and China on board with sanctions on North Korea. I think that's definitely a big marker of her career, but her almost disregard for the human rights aspect of the UN, basically the pure aspect of maintaining humanity and the dignity of humanity, kind of sets apart Nikki Haley, and why almost how why almost she made the position seem cowardly in the face of the world.
So, do you think that her resignation has anything to do with her um, confidence in the direction that her boss is taking the country?
I mean, I think there's definitely, she's a normal person. I'm sure there's a little bit of shame there. As you know, a few weeks ago at the UN General Assembly, they started laughing at President Trump. And I think that I'm sure that was probably like just her, not that incident specific, but just uh, the whole tensions with having to work under Trump's administration and having to defend Trump's action on the international playing field that led her to resign. And I'm pretty sure she resigned saying that she plans to work in the private sector. So I think Trump weaned her off of government for good.
All right. So we talked about doing some additional activities in relationship with our live stream every week.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was I gave you some links to download some software that would allow us to pull video off of YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So, as part of our ongoing live stream as we move forward, I'd like you to think about during the week the things that you're going to talk about on Friday. And one of the things that we'll be learning about in the video editing side of live streaming is how to make those points not just verbally, but with images, with graphic images. So, so for example, we might come prepared with a 3-minute clip that has maybe a few different voices from around the web, speaking about the subject that we are going to be live streaming about, and then we can play those clips, and then we can react to those clips as part of the live streaming that we are doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So have you had the chance to download software?
Not yet. I will get on that for sure. I've been really busted this week, end of quarter. Teacher trying to get grades in, so it's a lot of stuff to do. But I will get on that tonight.
And that's your full-time job.
Yeah.
Totally understood. And then you've got to take care of the schoolwork first.
Yeah.
So I'm very enthusiastic. I'm really looking forward to this being an ongoing live stream. And one of the names that we talked about last weekend, or that I have spoken with others about over the past week, is possibly calling this Happy Hour, Florida Media Live, the Florida Media Labs Happy Hour on Friday afternoons.
That sounds fun.
You
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that you have to leave at 5 o'clock, and we are, what time is it? 4:57?
4:57.
So what would you like to share with our audience as like Lawrence O'Donnell says, the last word for your first live stream webcast?
I guess just my final thoughts is I'm excited to show my views on political insights. It's not often that people will go to a 16-year-old and actually care what she has to say about what's going on in politics, but I'm excited to see what this opportunity has in store.
Great. So I don't want to keep you. I would like to be responsible, make sure.
Yeah, I'm going to be driven off to take online classes, but yeah.
So enjoy your evening, and thank you very much for being a part of this, and we look forward to this being a regular part of our audiences Friday afternoon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you again.
Good afternoon, folks. This is Florida Media Labs Live, or more fondly referred to now as Florida Media Labs Happy Hour on Friday afternoons. I'm here with Jorge Alvarez. I'm Rob Epson, your host. And we're going to be talking about the most important things that happened today. So what do you think? If you had to pick the three most important things that happened, Jorge?
I'd say at least in the past week, some of the most important things that have happened in our world and our surrounding environment is our president, Mr. Trump, meeting with hip-hop mogul, hip-hop face Kanye West to discuss different political issues. Some other ones would be the UFC sports fighting match between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor, where it led to an after-fight outside of the actual sanctioned fight that got them both suspended, and it was over racial slurs that were thrown. And some of the third most important things would be Eric Reed, an NFL football player, continuing the protest against police brutality by kneeling during the national anthem, and him not being looked down upon it as much as players in the past were.
So I think it's interesting when you talk about the protests during the NFL games. Who's the gentleman this week?
Eric Reed, just another player who believes in the cause.
So it's interesting that when you have this discussion with the folks that are totally opposed to the idea that people should have the right to protest as something that they believe is wrong, that it gets turned around into they're disrespecting our veterans because they're kneeling during the national anthem. Now, sometimes people get confused about the national anthem and the flag. They're not kneeling to the flag, they're kneeling to the national anthem, number one. Number two, they seem to forget that this isn't about disrespecting veterans. This is about protesting the lack of respect for the lives of young black men. And what do you, how do you think that you reach people who want to turn things around like that in their head? How do we bridge the divide between people that are trying to make a point and people that don't like the point being made and turn it into a different point?
Well, I believe it starts with those very people willing to listen, because when it comes to debating or communicating with somebody, one person might be listening to you just so you could finish, not necessarily listening to what you're saying. So in my experience with a lot of those people that like to say, oh, it's disrespectful to veterans, disrespectful to the flag, it's not kind to America, well, the original reason for the protest was because violent protests were clearly looked down upon. Obviously, it's a violent protest. Nobody wants that. So the people in that type of movement, young black men, thought to do something peaceful. So what they thought would be on a national scale, the national anthem in NFL games, a lot of people view that. So it's going to be seen. But it's a very peaceful protest. I personally don't see anything wrong with it. People who are twisting it, I think, are twisting it in their own benefit. They want to see it that way. They don't want to see this type of movement succeed, in my opinion. So I think it starts with them wanting to listen. It starts with we've done as much as we can. We can prove all our points that we want, but if they don't want to hear it, they don't want to hear it at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, it starts with them.
Do you think that part of the reason why they object so much is that they don't believe the police ever do anything wrong?
Partially, yeah. I think it's a lot of uneducatedness. They don't see necessarily. Maybe they don't see the headlines of another young black man shot or another young immigrant taken away from his family or whatever the case may be. But I think they choose not to see it. They don't want to see it. They ignore it. A lot of that side of things, in my opinion, is a choice. It's not. It's partially on not being educated, but a lot of it's a choice. They choose to view that way. So, like I said before, it starts with them wanting to change. We can't do anything.
So, several people, when I had this discussion in a veterans organization last week, pointed out that it wasn't disrespecting the veterans because the veterans fought for our right to be able to protest things that we believe were abuses of government. So it's not every veteran. In fact, the whole idea of kneeling was presented to, who was the first gentleman?
Colin Kaepernick, actually a gentleman who no longer has a job in the NFL due to this protesting. He's not hired. He's not been hired by any team. He's a good player. It's not due to lack of talent. It's due to the movement he was behind.
So he was actually informed by a veteran that what he was doing previously was inappropriate and that the appropriate way to do this protest was to kneel during the anthem. So it was actually a veteran's idea to use this form of protest. Yeah. So, so talk to me about Kanye.
I think that Trump he'd recently met with him at the White House. It was a very public thing. A lot of media was there. One of the biggest things that I took away from it, Kanye said that when he wore this MAGA hat, Make America Great Again hat, it made him feel like Superman, which is kind of a weird thing to say since he's already, I wouldn't say a man of power, but a man of influence. People see him, people know who he is, people know who his music is. His face is very well recognized. So why would he want to chase power? Maybe I don't believe a lot of what Kanye's doing is Kanye's decision. I believe he's being influenced to do this. I wouldn't say he's being paid, but I don't see what he gets out of it. He's very public with his music. He drops a lot of music. A lot of people know who he is already. I believe Trump is using him as a face to gain more support because, in my opinion, a lot of Trump's support is an uneducated side of people that will just whatever they see, whatever they hear, they'll believe in a sense. Or if you're loud and proud about yourself, they're going to believe you. That kind of thing. So I think he's using Kanye just as a face. People see Kanye, oh my goodness, my favorite rapper supports the president. I have to support the president type thing. He spoke to him about prison reform and other things. Not saying Kanye is uneducated, but why are you speaking to somebody who doesn't dabble in any kind of those subjects about those subjects? And they're serious subjects too. And he also spoke to Kanye West's wife, Kim Kardashian, a reality TV personality about prison reform, the same exact topic a few months ago. That's not really being talked about in the media. Prison reform isn't a very blown up thing. So I just, like I said before, I think he's using Kanye as a face to just gain more support, not really, lower prison reform or talk about real important political things.
I'm guessing that they have some very interesting discussions around the dinner table at Kanye's house in the evenings. Because my sense is that Kim and Kanye don't exactly see eye to eye on everything.
Wouldn't think so. I wouldn't. I mean, I think a lot of their lives are bought in a sense. They're not living for themselves. They're living for either money or for fame. But I don't know how Trump got Kanye on his side because a lot of his fellow black friends, artists and whatever the case may be, think he's doing something wrong. A lot of people have publicly warned him, "What are you doing?" Called him out and all that, and he's still behind Trump for some reason. And the way they speak isn't very, not saying it's very odd, but it's just kind of like it's what do you look at what he says and you're like, what are you saying? Uh, for example, Mr. Trump said he wanted to like enforce more stop and frisk kind of actions by police where it'll be legal for them to just randomly stop you if they so well may please. And Kanye agreed with it. And Kanye being somebody from Chicago, which is notoriously a violent city, it doesn't seem like he would, kind of agree with something like that. And he also encouraged something called Trump factories, which, Trump is all about bringing jobs to America to be built in Chicago. He's speaking on stuff, not saying he's not educated in it, but why would he be? I don't see him talking about any of this unless he's in front of Trump. You don't see Kanye supporting Trump unless he's next to the man. So I think a lot of this is kind of some fishy stuff going on here. It's not, whatever meets the eye. I think there's something behind this.
So you also have an interest in not just the political side of sports, but on the more pure sports side. And in fact, you're interested in being a sportscaster.
Yeah, hopefully the goal is to be on ESPN one day.
Okay. So what's your favorite sport?
Basketball, for sure.
Basketball.
Played it throughout high school, played it throughout most of my life.
And so are you playing now?
I mean, I play pickup every once in a while, but where I'm at right now, Lake County, it's not a consistent place to play. But hopefully, when I go off to a real university, I'll play a lot more. But I play when I can, for sure.
And what about this? Where you're going to school at? Are folks more interested in sports? Are they more interested in political stuff? Are they heads down into their college books just with studying, or what's the mood like on the college campus?
So right now I'm at Lake Sumter Community College, much smaller college. They don't really, the only sports they have are volleyball and baseball, so it's not very like a very big focus thing due to it being a small school and a community college, so it's kind of understandable. But I hope to transfer to your FSU, UCF, or another state school, and there's always a lot of intramural stuff going on there, and their actual sports are pretty big. A lot of people know about the Seminoles and the Knights. All those teams do good. So I hope that when I transfer to a bigger university, the influence of sports will be a lot bigger than it is where I'm at now.
So what are your interests at school right now, since there's not a lot of sports going on?
I mean, to be honest, Lake Sumter doesn't have a lot of very interesting clubs, in my opinion. They have some small political clubs, but I'm not a very political guy, simply because of the fact that I never really liked it. That was a very not confusing, but just not something I'm interested in, to put it in simple manners. I haven't done too much research on their clubs because, I go to school, I work, I have my own social life, so I've just not, because they didn't seem too big or very interesting, I never really took too much interest in them. But I know they do have a lot of like gaming clubs, stuff like that. They have a lot of like not gaming on like a TV, but like chess clubs and clubs like that. So I really go to school just for school at this point, to be honest. But hopefully, when I go to a bigger university, I'll definitely get involved in more extracurricular stuff.
So you would be considered a millennial?
Yeah, in a sense.
And what do you think about the millennial community? Is there any sense of civic responsibility among millennials, or are millennials just focused on getting out of school and getting a job? Or?
I think it's, to be honest, from what I'm surrounded by, it's definitely the latter. Getting what you need to get and getting out of here. It's not. A lot of people don't like to. They see they come. A very ironic thing I see a lot of times nowadays, and peers and just people I'm around and people my age group, is they don't want to vote. They choose not to vote, but they don't complain who's in office. It may not seem like your vote counts, but if you want to change something, you got to at least contribute to it. Can't complain about something you did nothing about to change. So I see a lot of people not wanting to vote. People complaining about jury duty, stuff like that. Whatever the case may be. But if you want to change this country and affect it, you got to take part in what the daily activities it takes to do that.
And what, by the way, is your major in school?
Communications.
Communications. So this kind of live streaming is a good experience, a good thing to put on your resume when you get your communications degree. And Do you have an idea where you're going when you in your career when you finish school?
I mean, hopefully, if I'm in Tallahassee or Orlando, FSU, UCF, those are two big, pretty cities. Honestly, I see Orlando as being more beneficial if I end up in UCF because there's multiple sports teams, a major league, minor league. There's a lot of business opportunities there, internships, whatever the case may be. So I think after um, college, wherever I'm living, I think if it's near a big city, I think I'll have a good chance of finding work, whatever God's plan is for me. But I'm pretty optimistic about where I'm going.
So, and ESPN's right up there at the top of the list.
ESPN is definitely at the top of the list, and I actually toured ESPN in 2016 Thanksgiving, senior year Thanksgiving, or no, last year Thanksgiving, 2017 Thanksgiving. To tour ESPN, and the interesting is you have to have a contact, you have to know somebody that works for them. And my former middle school lunch lady's son is like a cameraman at ESPN, so we got his contact info, talked to him, and we went to Connecticut because I was visiting family in Boston, Massachusetts. Went to, I forget what the city was called in Connecticut, but in Connecticut we went to ESPN headquarters where literally everything is recorded. I actually walked by at the time the Houston Astros just won the championship in the MLB, and I walked by the MVP of the finals. I forget his name, but I walked by him, and it was just kind of like a real surreal moment. I don't know if you know who he is, but Stephen A. Smith, a famous guy on ESPN, has his own talk show. I've looked at him and other guys like Max Kellerman, Will Kane, guys who didn't play the sport but got to where they're at today. Because the thing about sports broadcasting is it's a lot of former athletes and coaches. Shaquille O'Neal, those guys are on TV. So people like me, an average Joe, is to make it on TV and speak about sports without even playing them is a big accomplishment. But it is still a dream. If you look up those guys, they started from the ground up in internships and radio and then to TV. So that's the goal, to just start small but end up big.
So you mentioned that a lot of millennials or a lot of your fellow students will complain about the way things are,
Mm-hmm.
and then not go vote and not participate in any kind of effort to change things. So if in an ideal world, what would civic responsibility for young people look like?
Voting in all types of elections, I'd say. Being more educated on what you're doing in terms of speaking on it, voting. Don't just vote to vote. If you're going to vote, I believe you should be educated on what you're voting about. I don't know, just view civic duty more importantly than it is right now, because it's not viewed like as something we should do. And to be honest, I'm not saying I don't view it as important, but I don't think about it as much as I should, to be honest. I'm going to vote, and I voted in the past, but it just needs to be viewed more importantly as a collective society.
So we have a midterm election coming up next month, and we have a couple of candidates that are running for governor. Have you done any research?
I have not. My mom was going to sit me down in a few days and actually do some research on try to influence me on the Democratic side, which is probably what I'll vote for because I agree with those views more than anything. So we'll see how it goes. But I was going to get educated in a few days, yes, for sure.
Good. So again, as with Anaum, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our audience on your first live stream from Florida Media Lab?
I think it went well. I think there's a lot of opportunity in this kind of organization, this little group we got going on, and I'm really excited for this opportunity, and I thank you guys for giving this opportunity to me. Hopefully it leads to great things.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to it also enthusiastically. I think that as we move forward and we start putting more, first of all, understanding and education into how to put these live streams together, and as we also grow the team of interns, we have several more folks that are going to be joining us in the coming weeks. I think this will turn into a very interesting and I think audience participation will tend to grow, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir. I truly appreciate it, and I truly agree.
All right, so we'll be back again next Friday. The plan is to have a regular happy hour at Florida Media Labs from 4 to 6 every Friday afternoon. We are getting off to a little bit of a slow start. This is our first live stream, but moving forward, we will bring you we think are the most important things that we should be talking about. So thank you and have a great rest of your weekend.